everyone. Good morning. I was waiting you guys to say good morning without a missing. So why are you not saying anything? Okay, good morning. So clear, I need more coffee. All right. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. Pleasure to have you guys watching us through the internet. Today you have a lecture about our attitude towards the Spiritist Center. So you may recall that last week Teresa was here talking about what a Spirit Center is. Now Thiago will talk about what is our attitude towards it, right? So as usual, we're gonna start with a reading and a prayer. So Ika will do the reading and Eli will do the initial prayer for us. And just after that, we got Thiago to start it. All right? So thank you, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to read a passage from the book Happy Life from Divaldo Franco by the Spirit of Joanna de Angelis. Thank God for your existence. Praise Him by living a healthy life. Exalt Him with love through duties faithfully carried out. Dignify Him by being His devoted and faithful servant. Present Him to humanity by being a friend and brother in all circumstances. Glorify Him by working for the good of all, your brothers in humanity. Respect Him by obeying the sovereign laws that govern life. Recognize Him in all and everything, through a happy life as His beloved child. So be it.
Good morning again. So let's close our eyes, elevate our thoughts to the spiritual world, to God, to our Master Jesus. And first of all, be thankful for the week that has passed. Appreciate the day of being here for the teachings and the lecture of our friend Thiago. And ask for all the spiritual world, our archangels, to protect us in this week that will begin tomorrow. Ask them to be with us at all times, protecting, cleaning our hearts from our bad thoughts, and helping us to keep on going, always on the right track, believing that one day we'll be with them in the higher level. So be it. Thiago.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Very good to see everybody here in this nice and almost cold day. Almost cold. Don't tell me that it's cold, okay? You don't know what you're talking about. Let's talk in 1 month and a half. And then we know what is cold. Well, thank you for coming here. Thank you, everybody on the internet. We're speaking a little bit today about our attitude towards the Spiritist Center. But I would like to make a disclaimer. We're not only speaking about our attitude towards the Spiritist Center, because again, after studying and reflecting and trying to understand a little bit about the theme, watching the lecture last week, was it last week from Teresa?
Yes.
And I think she spoke a lot about it, because speaking about the Spiritist Center, it is impossible without speaking about the people who are in the Spiritist Center, no matter the capacity that you have here. You know, the audience, the participants in any way, the ones that come here to listen are important, because without you coming here, there is no reason for me to be here where I am, right? For those who volunteer in any capacity, for those who somehow are responsible for the coordination of the works here, for all of us, we come here with expectations. We come here with wishes. We come here thinking about, you know, where is our place here in this house, right? And what it represents for us. And maybe that's a little bit of what I want to explore together with you. It is exactly, you know, why do we come here? What is the intentions? And after we come with all those intentions and those expectations, what exactly do we find in order to help us to understand what our attitude and our conduct could be? Not only attitude, and then I was thinking, after reading and studying a little more, I would also call the conduct, because I think there is 2 points here. One, the attitude. The attitude doesn't need to be something visible. It could be our wishes, our expectations, our thoughts, our desires. And then there is our conduct. Our conduct is really our behavior, how we act with each other and how we act in the center. Right? And I asked for the book again from this message, and I will probably speak about that as well. All the time there is some sort of connection between the theme of the lecture and some of the content of the messages. Always there is a connection. I would like to explore that connection a little bit. So, thinking about attitude and thinking about conduct, I would always think about, we need to have some guidelines, right? If we don't know what are the rules of a place, we don't know how to act. So chances are that we're going to act against it, not intentionally. And if we think about the revelations that were given to us throughout all those thousands of years, how can we think that this has been given to us? Probably way before Jesus came to us and presented in example the divine laws or the natural laws that today we study in the Spiritism. There was somebody that brought a code of conduct to us. Right? And this one was Moses, when he presented to us the first psychographed book, which was the Table of the Ten Commandments, which by the direct writing in those stone slabs, the spirits imprinted those laws, which were the foundation of all the code of conduct that we have today in our lives. Today, I believe that we have difficulty even understanding the meaning and the importance and the power of those 10 commandments. Starting with loving God with all our understanding, with all our heart. And then when Jesus comes and summarizes those laws and tells us, love God above all and love your neighbor as you love yourself. If we knew somehow, if we had in us developed the understanding and the practice of those laws and this code of conduct, I would not need to be here learning, studying, understanding, and trying to put in practice myself and then sharing with us that. But also Jesus knew that the time would come when we would be able to understand and make sure that we would unveil the essence of some of those teachings that he gave us, because he knew that Moses prepared us, and I say us because probably we were there or around, against, pro those laws, but we were somehow introduced to them. And maybe back in that time we were not ready. We were still too rough. We were still too brute. We were still too ignorant in order to really assimilate and introject to put in practice those laws and that code of conduct. When Jesus comes to us, he was very clear through the examples on how he would treat the people around him, what he would think and understand that what our conduct was. And what I'm saying is, I'm trying to talk about our attitude in general, because that would reflect the way, first of all, that we act in the Spiritist Center. Back in the time, there was not necessarily one Spiritist Center. Spiritism was not here yet. But since then, he was planting that seed to shape our attitude in more consistent ways, which today we can do in a much more contained, in a much more structured, in a much more organized way in what we are doing right now. One way that we can understand that many times our attitude is represented in that passage in the Gospel. This passage is in the book of John, in the Gospel of John, in the chapter 5, and between the verses 2 and 9. John describes the visit that Jesus makes to this pool. The ruins of this pool exist until today, in that place called Bethesda. And what would that be? It was a pool where people who had problems, physical problems, would go to. And the tides and the waves would go up and go down, and go up and go down. And they would be expecting those waves. And it is being said that every time that someone would be bathed with one of those waves, they would be healed. So there they were, suffering, many of them with severe mobility problems. They could not walk, they could not even come close to the water. They would be just there waiting for the waters to come to them. And then Jesus goes there one day and he sees one person that was paralyzed. And this person was like in the back, far from the waters. Apparently he could not even come close to the stairs. He would be up there and the waters basically would never go to him. And then Jesus looks at him and he asks, "Do you want to be healed?" And then this man says, "Master, I would never be healed." It's like people can go before me. And apparently it is a kind of a first come, first serve. If the water touched the first person, forget about the others. You know, like you lost your time. Not today. Just tomorrow you come back and see if you were lucky enough for the waters to touch you, so then you would be healed. And then he said, every time that the waters come, it touch somebody else, they are healed. And I can never get there. But then Jesus asked, "Do you want it?" Yes. And then Jesus says, "Get up. Take your bed," because they would take those beds, which are not beds, made with straw. Those little straw beds. It would be like mats. And they would be laying down. And that is interesting because Jesus said, "Get up. Take your bed and walk." And this man gets up, takes his bed, and walks. And then by that moment, he was healed. And it is very significant for us, that passage. We know that the Spiritism helps us to understand and to unveil several layers of understanding of the teachings that Jesus gave to us. Now let's try to bring this today. How many times we come to the symbolic pool of Bethesda, coming down the stairs here in the Toronto Spiritist Society, right? And then we come here with that expectation. And also we come here sometimes with that feeling like this man had. No matter what I will do here, it's not going to work. Sometimes we may have a different attitude. We will come here and think that just because we got down the stairs and we came here and sit down, everything will be done. Probably expecting that those waters would touch our feet and our entire being would be transformed. However, we know that one of the first things that may happen when we arrive, that's not what we encounter. Many times we may leave exactly in the same way that we came. Many times we will talk to someone, we will listen, we may not even understand well, and then we will go. And sometimes there is disappointment. There we go, our attitude becomes disappointment. And we will try to come back. And sometimes we will go to different places. We will try different strategies in order to have answered some of our questions. And there we are expecting those waves to come to us. Many times we look at other people, many times people come here and look at us standing up and saying those beautiful words and thinking, well, those are the ones being touched by those waters. I have nothing to do with this. And they will go. But the question is always there. And the invitation is always there. So let's continue and think about how that invitation appears for us. Because at the end of the day, that invitation is hitting us from inside, in fact. Of course, that Jesus doesn't stop. His entire journey is a journey for us to encourage us to make that move and to get up and to take, when we say our bed, right, to take that foundation that we have, to take what we need to have in order to find ourselves held, to find ourselves protected, to find ourselves, to feel ourselves better, and take that and go and walk. Jesus comes back after his discarnation, and that is in Mark, and he comes back and he stays with everybody, and he talks to the disciples, and he continues teaching. And then in the day that he departed materially, even though he was discarnated, he materializes himself, stays for 40 days with us, and then tells everybody before he leaves, go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation. And then he leaves. And again, he continues telling us, he continues inviting us, and he continues giving us the way for us. If we decide to get up and to walk, what are the things that we can do? Because if this gospel, which is actually the example of his life, are to be proclaimed in the whole world, we are part of this world. This is to be proclaimed to us, and this needs to resonate in us. For us, then, to be able to express ourselves, reflecting those lessons. And obviously, when Allan Kardec starts communicating with the spirits, when Allan Kardec starts to organize the messages that are starting to be received throughout the world, revealing the essence of the message of Jesus, we enter a new chapter in our existences in order to not only understand, but also the invitation becomes, we, in order to really fully understand, we will need to change. We will need to do something. That attitude needs to be reflected in something concrete in our lives. Of course, we can see that as well when the Apostle James tells us, right? Show me your faith and I will show you my work. Because my faith will be shown to us through my work. Not only the faith in itself without the works. Because that, he says, that is dead already. But it is the works. Therefore, that's why the attitude that we are being invited to have constantly. Now, so why do we come to the Spiritist Center? What's going on when we come here? We know that sometimes we come here with a physical pain. Sometimes we come here with different illnesses. Sometimes we don't have the answers for our questions. And then we come here to try to find answers. We come here with the many different kinds of conflicts in our lives. The list goes on. And also we come here because we're curious. Because one day somebody says, you know, they talk to the dead. Maybe they are curious to look at us and say if we are really crazy or not. And here we are, for those various reasons, trying to find answers for something, for questions that we have. And that is among our first attitudes when we come here. We are inquisitive. We are asking for something. And that is the start of change. When we make a question, it's because we want an answer. Because if we are questioning something, it's because we are not satisfied with what we have. And that is already the first change that leads us here. Therefore, our attitude when we come here already has slowly changing before we come here. Therefore, the importance of this place and the works that are done here, they irradiate all around, and somehow they may hit us like those waves. What is done here helps us to look for something different for our lives, to look for different answers for the questions that we have. However, not only with the questions we come, but already we arrive here with the answers. I know what I want because I know what I need. I just came here because I have a problem in, physically speaking. I just need some relief for that, and then I will be gone my way. I just need some advice because I heard that you guys help people that are having conflict and then you help them, and then I will be on my way. Thank you. I'm coming here because you have those passes. I came from Brazil and then I used to go have passes, in the passes day there where I used to go, the other Spiritist center, and then I'm here and I want to know, when do you give passes? I said that many times. We don't only come here with questions, but we come here with expectations. To be cured, to be alleviated, to receive something. And those expectations usually are, what can you do for me? Right? What can the center do for me? Many come here saying, I have a physical problem, so the Spiritist Center is going to help me with my physical problem. What usually we receive in terms of answer, right? Well, Have you gone to the hospital before? Have you gone to your doctor? And then, of course, here is the disappointment again. No, but I heard that you help to cure. Yes, we help. Not necessarily you're going to leave here completely cured, but yeah, we do talk about it. We have expectations. We come here with a lot of thoughts and feelings on what the Spiritist Center is and what it does for us. Therefore, many times, even though we come here searching for something, our attitude is passive. Many times we blame the illness. Many times we blame the partners. Many times we blame destiny and faith. We blame the world, the government, the lack of money for problems that we are facing. And that passage and another passage from the book Missionaries of Light from the Spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Let me speak about that passage first. So, André Luiz is in the Spiritist Center, in the spiritual side, right? Where they have a different perspective of what happens in a Spiritist Center, the spiritual dimensions. And André Luiz is invited to look into a case of a person, a man that had physical illness, and he is there for the passes, for the 10th time. It is the 10th session of passes that he is going to receive, and he is invited to analyze and to study and to reflect on this case. He says, okay, well, 10 times, but if, and he starts saying, no, but if the guy, the man is sick, and he's coming here after 10 times, what's going to happen? How many more times he's going to get a pass? The spiritual directors would say, no more. No more. And André Luiz was completely like enraged with that. And it's beautiful to see André Luiz evolving as well in the books for those who have the opportunity to read the series of Nosso Lar. In the beginning, he's so like unconformed. Why people don't help those who come here? And one of the greatest lessons that he receives analyzing the case of this man that during 10 sessions comes for the passes is when they present to André Luiz with this man's file. In fact, from the first day to the 10th day, he never changed. He didn't get better. And when understanding the reasons why he didn't get better, it is because every single time that he would receive the pass, he would leave. But his attitude would not change. He was still a very irritable man. He is still a very difficult person. He would still hold resentments and grudges and anger and everything. And he would not do what has been advised to him to do. And he didn't learn. And he didn't change on his own. Coming 10 times here means that you may come for 10 minutes every week. The day itself has 24 hours. Imagine this times 7. Therefore, you understand how much you are here in the Spiritist Center. And how much you are not in the Spiritist Center. And then we can put in perspective the importance of what the Spiritist Center can do for us, however the importance of what we can do for us. And also, a little bit of a shift starts to happen, and that passage represents really something beautiful, which is the passage of Jesus that when he cleanses 10 lepers. So when he was in Jerusalem, and he was between Samaria and Galilee, and he enters a village and he sees 10 lepers, 10 people with needs, 10 people who needed help. And they see Jesus at a distance and say, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. When he saw them, he said to them, go and show yourselves to the priests. Now again, here is Jesus not even coming close to them. Here is Jesus like lighting that spark in all of them. Go. He's not saying, wait a second, I will grab you by the hand, I will go after you. No. He says, you go, and you go show yourselves to the priests. And by the moment that they made the first movement to go towards the temple to show themselves to the priest, they were all cleansed. All of them. However, one of them comes back. One of them looks to Jesus, fell at Jesus' feet, and gave him thanks. And he said, thank you. Thank you for healing me. And the passage also says that he was a Samaritan, which is interesting because he was a person that not necessarily was well seen by the society back in that time. He was not somebody well versed in the laws and anything like that. And then Jesus answered, were not 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? And then he said, no one found the way to return and to thank. And then Jesus told him, rise and go your way. Your faith has made you well. Now, maybe that still shows for us what Jesus says, that what is the narrow door. Out of 10, 1 was healed. Maybe out of 10 times that we come here, we may start having a change of mind or a change of heart, maybe after the 10th time. Symbolically speaking, we need a lot of practice. We need a lot of reminders. We need a lot of help in order to start to understand that usually what we want from others needs to start from us. What we want from the Spiritist Center is usually what the Spiritist Center gives back to us. Do you want to be healed? Do you want to change? What are you doing to change? And we come here with those expectations, blaming others for our problems, therefore expecting that others need to change in order for us to get better. And what is given to us is a mirror, many times, and the opportunity for us to look at ourselves. Therefore, we are able to look at what is not letting us change. There is this book here, The Way, the Truth, and the Life, by the Spirit Emmanuel. And I think he has a very powerful message for us, because he shows and he puts in perspective what the Spiritist Center or what this temple can do to us. Because he shows that at the end of the day, what is the most important temple? It is our own temple, our inner world, the temple of our bodies that is housing our spirits today, It is our mental house, like André Luiz usually says. It is the temple of our experiences, our relationships. It is the temple where we look and grow from within ourselves. Emmanuel, right in the beginning of this book, will tell us that the gospel cannot be reduced to a breviary for the kneeling board. And that already shows us a great difference from many other opportunities that we have to understand what we need to do in order to change. And here we're not speaking necessarily about any religion or any faith, but represents our external attitude that we have, which is represented by a very important symbol. Some of us know that many times in order to talk to God, we were encouraged to kneel. We were encouraged to put our heads down. We were encouraged to say some words, as if this will necessarily change our attitude. For some it would, but not necessarily it is the only thing that we need to do. It is the starting point for many of us. It is an indispensable script for legislation and administration, the gospel, Jesus' teachings, for service and for obedience. And here is Emmanuel speaking about obedience, speaking about service, speaking about administration. Who or what we can administer. Our own resources. What are our resources? What we already have to offer. Where are we going to put this in practice? How we are going to put a service to others what we are already acquiring in our lives. Or what we come with in order to go in this path during this incarnation. Which kind of tools we're going to use from our toolbox when we come here. What's the use that we're going to put? Christ does not draw a line between the temple and the workplace. And I think here it is one incredibly important point. When we come here with an attitude asking the Spiritist Center what we should do, to be honest, I think one of the best advices that I've seen the Spiritist Center give to me is go. And I said, but I just arrived. And I say, yeah, but what you need to do is not necessarily here. Here you're going to recharge. Now, are you ready? Okay, now you go. Now you go to your life, to your challenge. Go back to your challenge. How many times our attitude coming here may be expecting that the solutions will be given here and the reward will be given here, but the problems and the challenges and the difficulties and those who we need to reconcile with are not here. And then we start, well, we need to bring them here. Why? Who do we want to convince? Are we ready to convince anybody? But the attitude is, we need to make the move. We need to go towards the resolution of our challenges and our issues. The whole earth is simultaneously his prayer altar and his work arena. By praising him in the temples while denying him in the streets, we have become shipwrecked 1,000 times through our own fault. However, any place can be consecrated to the divine service. I don't want to put anybody out of here. Of course not. But the most interesting thing, and usually it is counterintuitive, but many counterintuitive messages that I receive are the ones that make me think. When I come to the Spiritist Center, and in the Spiritist Center I read this message for the first time. And it's telling me there is no separation between the temple and the workplace and the home that I live. And then I started thinking, so then why am I here? Because probably here I had that first revelation given to me. The Spiritist Center is where, in the 21st century, we have the opportunity to sit down and to have revealed the essence of the teachings of Jesus that are being given by thousands and thousands and thousands of spirits all over the world for centuries, in a very organized way, at least for 150, if not more. For us, things started with the Spiritist book, 1857. In fact, for many, it started before. Allan Kardec, with his Spiritist magazine, already has been writing and reflecting and inviting others to do the same. Many times in the Spiritist Center that we are awakened to the reality of the Spirit. That we start understanding that more than acquiring material goods, there are other kinds of wealth that we are to acquire. Now, I like to use usually the source. I always like to go back to Jesus himself when he teaches us. And I love the opportunity that the Spiritist gives us to really unveil certain of the messages and certain of the meanings that can be given to us. And Jesus told us already what is our attitude that we are to have here and elsewhere. For instance, what would be our attitude when we come here angry, when we come here resented, when we come here because we have conflicts and problems with somebody, when we come here tormented by this feeling that never leaves us, and we are trying to do something with it and trying to find reasons why this is happening. Again, many times with expectations that we're going to understand, or trying to change others. But Jesus already told us something. If you are offering your gift to the altar, like if you are coming here to the Spiritist Center, if you're coming here to sit down and pray and be gentle and practice being nice, and you remember that your brother has something against you out there in the world, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are with him, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, blah, 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 blah. Jesus is telling us our attitude. In the same way that we had the initiative to come here, Jesus is telling us, if you had the initiative to come here, go and have the initiative to go after the issues that you need to solve. Our attitude that the Spiritist Center teaches us is practice the reconciliation. Face the difficulty to forgive, to understand, to see the other side, to get rid of that resentment. Otherwise, your offers, your prayers are not going to be as valid as the work that you are doing. Your best prayer would be the conversation that you're going to have with your enemy today. So then tomorrow you restore the relationship that you have with them, because you are brothers and sisters after all. Towards the passions of material life. We are in the world. But the advice that we receive here is, be in the world, but don't be of the world. What would that mean? That means, let's put in perspective all that the world can give us. The wealth, the positions, the social status, the money, the wealth, the benefits that we have more or less than others. Put that in perspective and never forget that the reality is we are spirits. The wealth that we have is the virtues that we develop. What we have here today on this earth, it is a concession that will be taken from us at any time. We don't even know when. But the wealth that we develop within ourselves, that one no one will take. That one God will make sure not only that will be preserved, but very soon He will ask you to put it to test, to see how strong it is. Of course that this is something that constantly we are here being reminded of. But sometimes it is difficult for us to grasp. Our reality is spiritual. We don't need to neglect our material life, but we need to put in perspective and start taking care of our spiritual side as well. Our spiritual first aid, our spiritual self-care. And that will balance our lives and we will feel more whole. And that the Spiritist Center is teaching us how to have that attitude. Also, coherence and authenticity. You know, Jesus tells a lot to us about the hypocrites that He would say back then. The ones who would speak beautiful words, but inside themselves it would be a mess. How many doctors of the laws, the priests, that would profess beautiful words, but when they would gather together, they would conspire against. They would hold, they would plan revenges. They would be so negative, even though they would profess what was positive. He would say, "Do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than that comes from evil." Jesus said that. If we say yes, let it be yes. If we say no, let it be no. And that will help us to make our lives much less difficult. The benevolence. The attitude of benevolence. Jesus told us that too. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist to one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you in the right cheek, turn him also the other. If anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, everyone knows that, go the second with them. Do not refuse to help those who ask for help. We may think a lot about this person, but at the end of the day, they are the ones today with the same attitude that we had one day when we came to the Spiritist Center, with that expectation that something will be given to us. Today we have somebody beside us that might expect, demand, and ask from us to give. And here we have the opportunity to give. And of course the practice of the charity. Because Jesus already told us, you have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. So then you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For He makes His sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain to the just and the unjust. And if you love only those who love you, what good will be of you? And Jesus presents us with the opportunity to forgive, to be gentle, to be benevolent, to be indulgent. I remember one day you posted about indulgent, Marcia, on the internet. Yes, a long time ago. And actually I was surprised because I didn't think back in the time about the indulgence. The only indulgence that I thought it was when we think about like having ice cream and chocolate, to indulge ourselves. No, and then I went there, and in fact, the idea of being indulgent, being benevolent, being forgiven, being charitable, put our love in action, put our love to anybody that needs love. Those who today are the supposed enemies are those who still didn't know how to love. Understanding that others are still growing like we are growing, which leads us to the humbleness. And that is a classic passage from Jesus. Don't let your left hand see what your right hand does. Don't try to do something good for others to recognize you. Do the good for the sake of doing good. Do the good for this good feeling that you see somebody smiling when they receive something that they need. Don't try to be more, or don't try to be less than what we really are today. Because that's the only way that we can continue stepping on our own shoes. Of course, developing our spirituality. And I believe that is one of the greatest lessons that the Spiritist Center can give to us. It is putting in practice our spiritual qualities. And of course, He does that by teaching us many things, including when He says, when you pray, don't pray like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and in the street corners. And here I listen a lot, because being here doesn't make me be better than anybody else, because I am in front here of everybody else, but I'm being held accountable for every single word that I say, because the real prayer is from the heart, because the real attitude happens when nobody else is seeing. It is not here. And to practice those qualities, the forgiveness, the tolerance, the respect, that it is very easy for us to do in the Spiritist Center. We smile more here. We are always, embedded in fraternity, in a good spiritual environment that encourages us to be better. But then we leave. And when we leave, what are we taking from that? What are we taking from here? How much time does it take for our smile turn into something else? And faith. Jesus already told us, because our anxiety is not going to put one more hour in our day. Because good and bad receive everything that they need. Because the birds of the sky and the lilies of the field have absolutely nothing, but there is always shelter, but there is always food, but there is always protection, but there is always the blessing every single day. Many times we complain that we don't have the help that we need, but we don't realize and we don't listen to the inspiration, to the words of advice that we receive that come from somewhere, and we don't understand where they come from, and then we resist to walk that path that has been given to us. We resist to take that direction that our spirits and our spiritual friends are helping us to take. The faith is understanding that most of the time our lives are being guided, and being able to follow that is an act of faith. It is the knowledge that we cannot do this alone. And of course, The Spiritist Center helps us to put in practice that attitude of the apprentice. The apprentice in the spiritual life. The apprentice of the spiritual life. The apprentice of the putting in practice the virtues that Jesus is teaching us constantly. It is an invitation that we are here to put in practice being the 21st century disciple. What does that mean? That means that today we have the opportunity to understand many of those layers of meaning that Jesus told us many times. And we have the opportunity to make a different sense of everything that is being given to us. And instead only to listen and to talk about it, but to live it. The idea today, the Spiritist Center invites us to have the attitude to live what we learn. To put in practice what we are taking in terms of information here. To make it alive, those words that the spirits are giving to us to learn. Because Jesus doesn't stop telling us, the Spiritism doesn't stop reminding us. We are constantly being reminded. And when we come to the Spiritist Center, when we practice being helpful, being benevolent, being charitable, when we practice volunteering, when we practice being together with the kids, when we practice through sharing learnings that we have here with you, when we practice facilitating a study, when we practice talking to each other, being fraternal with each other, it is that rehearsal, that putting in practice something that we can do every single day. Because when Jesus tells us that everybody then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house in the rock. Let us not only think that the Spiritist Center is a house built on a rock, but let us take the lesson that all of those who work in the Spiritist Center, that is a house that, even though it is a human institution, existed because God allows it to exist. And the help that the spirits give us in the Spiritist Center is proportional to the work that we put in. Let us make ourselves have the solid basis, the solid foundation based on the teachings of Jesus, on the codification that Allan Kardec brought to us, on the teachings of the Spiritism. Let that foundation be the steps that we give every single day in our lives. And we will know that every single step that we give based on that foundation, we will have Jesus walking beside us every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack, for the lecture. And we do have time for a few questions or comments if anyone has any. I do have one. I remember my mother telling me when I was a kid, every time that I did something wrong, and she said, "Don't do that. It's not polite." I said, "Why not? I'm at home. There's no one here." But it doesn't matter. Whatever you do at home, you're gonna do outside. And then I was keeping thinking, what I'm doing here, am I doing outside as well, right? And are you educated by my mom as well? Are you my brother? I didn't know that.
No, I had a grandmother. I had a grandmother that I thought that would. Every time that we go to the Spiritist Center, she was at home and she would tell me, "Please pray for us. Please pray for us." And I used to think that it is because I said, "Come on, Grandma, you gotta go with me then, because you gotta pray for yourself and stuff." Silly me. Today, after years that she discarnated, I keep looking back, and she was the one telling me to go there. Because she already knew everything that was being taught. And she used to tell me, "You gotta go there because you still have a lot to learn there in that place." And then she used to encourage me to pray, because every single day I would come home 6 o'clock, she would be in front of the TV praying, no matter who with. But she was doing it and I wasn't. Right?
Anyone else? Any comment? Anything they'd like to share? No? All right. So thank you very much, Thiago.
Thank you.
We're going to get prepared for the passes. We invite you guys to watching from home that do your own final prayer. And thanks so much for being with us.